Have you ever wondered why the streets of Los Angeles, New York, or Vegas are so quiet? I bet there will be nearly no South Korean tourists in the US in the next few years. This is a typical remark, but it might also be a warning sign for US tourism in 2026. Just a few years ago, over 2 million South Korean tourists visited the United States every year, filling restaurants, casinos, and streets with energy. But now, that number has dropped to less than a third of what it once was. So why are South Korean tourists leaving? And who will be left to pay the price for this dramatic disappearance? Will American businesses and tourist hotspots feel the impact? Let's dive into this story and uncover the truth behind the declining numbers. If you agree with this shift, comment 1 below. If not, leave a 0. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Now let's explore this fascinating issue together. In recent years, Korean tourism in the US has undergone a significant change, especially with a sharp decline in the number of visitors from South Korea. A few years ago, the number of Korean tourists visiting the US exceeded 2 million annually, contributing greatly to the economy, especially in major cities like Los Angeles, New York, and Las Vegas. These areas were accustomed to the presence of Korean tourists, which not only made the neighborhoods livelier, but also boosted the development of service industries such as restaurants, hotels, and retail stores. However, the current situation is in stark contrast. One of the most noticeable signs of this decline is the emptiness of popular restaurants, especially BBQ spots, where customers used to wait 40 minutes for a table. Now these restaurants are not only lacking in customers, but are also facing issues with dusty tables, idle staff, and the absence of the clinking sounds of glasses that used to ring through the air. This situation is not just happening at Korean restaurants, but has spread to other stores and services that once catered to Korean tourists. The biggest loss that the US economy faces is not only the reduction in revenue from restaurants, but also the impact on other sectors, including Uber drivers, hotel staff, and small businesses. Uber drivers, who were once an integral part of the transportation for tourists, no longer benefit from the increased trips by Korean visitors. Meanwhile, hotels, from large chains to small establishments, are facing empty rooms and declining revenue as the number of bookings has dropped significantly. Small business owners, who relied on Korean tourists for a steady income, are now deeply concerned. They have not only lost a key customer base, but are also facing fierce competition from other services. This has driven many businesses into difficult situations, some of which have even had to close or scale back their operations. This situation is not just an issue for the service industry, but also has a widespread impact on the entire local economic ecosystem. Several factors have contributed to this decline, including changes in policies and the global economic situation. One important factor is the economic situation in South Korea, where a decrease in income and international travel demand has had a significant impact on people's travel decisions. As the standard of living rises, international travel expenses are no longer prioritized. Additionally, factors such as visa policies and changes in social and cultural elements have also contributed to the decrease in the number of tourists traveling to the US. Moreover, global disruptions, from the COVID-19 pandemic to economic and political crises, have made it harder for South Koreans to travel freely. When the pandemic hit, international flights were restricted, and travel became difficult and unsafe, causing many South Koreans to delay their trips. Although recovery signs post-pandemic have been positive, international tourism has yet to return to pre-pandemic levels. Looking at the situation of Korean tourism in the US, several important lessons can be drawn for the US tourism industry. First, over-reliance on a specific group of tourists is a risky factor. Restaurants and service businesses need to diversify their clientele and should not depend solely on one group of visitors, even if they come from a country with a stable influx like South Korea. Expanding customer bases, including developing products and services targeted at other potential markets, will help mitigate the negative impacts when the number of tourists changes. Second, the tourism industry needs to build sustainable and flexible strategies. From improving customer experiences to developing attractive travel packages, tourism managers need to innovate and be creative to attract international tourists again. This will not only help the tourism sector grow stronger, but also ensure quick recovery after market shocks. Lastly, there must be close cooperation between service businesses and the government. The U.S. government should introduce supportive policies for the tourism industry, from easing visa barriers for international visitors to creating incentive programs to attract back tourists from South Korea and other countries. Developing a business-friendly and supportive environment will create opportunities for the U.S. tourism industry to recover and grow stronger in the future. Although the Korean tourism sector in the U.S. is facing many difficulties right now, with the right policies and innovative business strategies, the U.S. tourism industry can still recover and attract a large number of visitors from South Korea again in the future. The changes in travel trends will open up new opportunities for businesses, as long as they are able to adapt and change with the new circumstances. However, the most important lesson from this decline is never to underestimate the changes in consumer and travel trends. The U.S. tourism industry must continue to innovate and grow, creating exceptional travel products that appeal to a diverse range of customers, thereby contributing to the sustainable development of the tourism economy in the future. Recently, the mass deportation of over 300 Korean workers from Georgia has shaken not only the Korean community in the U.S., but also has had a significant impact on the trust that Korean tourists have in the U.S. tourism industry. This incident is not merely a legal or administrative issue, but highlights a deeper concern about how foreign citizens and tourists are treated, sparking concerns among those planning to visit the U.S. The deportation of Korean workers in Georgia has not only caused debates about the legality of the decision, but also created a wave of anxiety within the Korean community, particularly those planning to travel or work in the U.S. Many Korean families have begun to cancel planned trips, fearing that they may face harsh scrutiny or even be treated unfairly upon arrival. One major question raised in this context is, if Korean workers are treated this way, can Korean tourists expect to be welcomed? This question reflects doubts not only about Americans' friendliness toward international visitors, but also about the insecurity felt by those preparing to travel to the U.S. Will the policies and actions of the U.S. government create a safe and welcoming environment for tourists? Or will this event mark the beginning of a negative trend for Korean tourists? It's not just the Korean workers who are concerned about unfair treatment. Many Korean tourists are starting to rethink whether they should travel to the U.S. A Korean family who had planned to visit the U.S. shared that they are considering canceling their trip due to concerns over strict checks and the possibility of being treated unjustly, which has made them feel unwelcome. This is a major psychological shock for those who have always viewed the U.S. as an ideal tourist destination characterized by freedom and friendliness. This issue goes beyond how foreign workers are treated. It also touches on trust in the system and policies of a country. When such a major event occurs, it not only damages the trust of the affected country's citizens, but also influences those who are planning to visit that country. A person might reconsider their travel plans if they feel unsafe or worry that their treatment will not be fair. The deportation of Korean workers is not just a temporary event. It will have long-lasting effects. Tourism is one of the most important industries in the U.S., particularly for major cities like Los Angeles, New York, and Las Vegas, which heavily rely on international visitors. Losing the trust of a large group of tourists, such as the Koreans, can have long-term consequences on the country's tourism industry. Businesses in the U.S., especially those in the service industry, will face a reduction in tourists, which will negatively impact revenue and create a downward cycle in the tourism economy. The lesson to be learned from this event is the importance of maintaining the trust of international tourists. Authorities and organizations need to take measures to ensure that tourists feel safe and are treated fairly when they visit the U.S. A clear strategy should be in place to protect the rights of citizens and visitors, ensuring they always feel welcomed in the diverse environment of the U.S. Additionally, the U.S. tourism industry must focus on improving the country's image to international visitors. Unfair treatment of one group can have a negative ripple effect on others, especially when incidents like the deportation of Korean workers come to light. The U.S. must do more to ensure that all visitors, regardless of nationality or ethnicity, are treated equally and fairly when they come to visit. The U.S. tourism industry has long relied on the influx of international visitors, especially from economically strong countries like South Korea. On average, each Korean tourist spends over $4,000 during their visit to the U.S., a substantial amount for the country's economy. From dining, shopping, and lodging to tourist activities, these expenditures contribute significantly to the development of the service and tourism industries in the U.S. However, with the decline in Korean tourists, the U.S. economy is not only losing direct revenue from their spending, but also suffering indirect consequences from changes in consumption and travel habits. Even a small group, such as 100 tourists, altering their travel plans can result in the U.S. losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in economic activity. If a Korean family decides to cancel their trip to the U.S. due to concerns about unfair treatment, this will significantly reduce the revenue for businesses related to tourism, from hotels and restaurants to car rental companies and entertainment services. While the change in numbers might seem minor, the economic impact is substantial, especially for cities that rely heavily on international visitors. The emptiness at tourist spots, stores, and essential services not only leads to reduced revenue, but also diminishes opportunities for local employment for those dependent on the tourism industry. However, the larger loss is not just in monetary terms, but also in trust. The trust of international visitors in the U.S. as a welcoming destination has been eroded. When visitors from a major country like South Korea feel they are treated unfairly, this not only reduces the number of tourists, but also creates hesitation in planning future trips. A shift in the behavior of one group of tourists can lead to a ripple effect, influencing tourists from other countries. Travelers from other nations may reconsider visiting the U.S. because they do not want to experience similar treatment. A recent survey in South Korea revealed that nearly 60% of the population feels disappointed by how the U.S. handled the situation, particularly the deportation of workers. This disappointment does not only affect trade contracts, but also influences the travel decisions of South Koreans. When confidence in the policies and management of the U.S. is shaken, simple decisions like booking a hotel or purchasing a flight ticket to the U.S. are affected. South Korean tourists no longer feel safe or welcome, leading them to alter their travel plans, which has a significant detrimental effect on the tourism industry. Surveys show that when trust is weakened, tourists not only cancel their planned trips, but also become less likely to choose the U.S. as a travel destination in the future. This further increases instability in the tourism economy, as international tourist numbers drop and related businesses face declining revenues and uncertainty for the future. When trust in a country is compromised, industries tied to tourism and services face not only short-term revenue loss but also long-term impacts. Travel businesses, hotels, airlines, and retail stores will find it difficult to recover in a short time unless timely measures are taken to restore the trust of international tourists. Moreover, if the dissatisfaction of tourists is not addressed quickly and effectively, it could create a negative feedback loop. Potential tourists from other countries will begin to feel wary, and a tourism economy that is in the process of recovery may spiral back into crisis. This highlights that trust is not only a crucial factor in attracting tourists, but also a foundation for the sustainable development of the tourism industry. In the current context, South Korean tourists are increasingly shifting their focus to alternative destinations, partly due to feelings of unfriendliness and difficulties in obtaining U.S. visas. Japan, Paris, and other locations have become attractive options, as many Korean travelers feel less welcome in the U.S. or face cumbersome administrative procedures. This shift not only reflects a change in travel trends, but also serves as an alarming signal for the U.S. tourism industry. One of the key reasons why South Korean tourists are looking for alternatives is the sense of unfriendliness and insecurity. Recent events, such as the mass deportation of Korean workers in Georgia, have eroded the trust that the Korean community has in the U.S. Disappointment over how the U.S. handled issues related to Korean citizens has led to reluctance in visiting the country. Furthermore, the U.S. visa application process is seen as complicated and time-consuming, causing many Korean tourists to feel frustrated and choose more accessible destinations, such as Japan, where visa procedures are much simpler. Besides Japan, Paris has also emerged as a popular destination. The City of Lights not only offers rich culture and history, but is also known for its warm hospitality toward international tourists. Promotional travel programs and more flexible visa policies have made Paris an increasingly attractive destination, especially for Korean tourists seeking a safer and more accessible travel environment. The shift in travel preferences of Korean tourists is not only impacting the tourism industry, but also significantly affecting the U.S. economy, particularly businesses in the service sector. If just 50 Korean tourists cancel their trips, the financial loss could amount to $200,000 in just a few days. This can cause a significant decline in revenue for restaurants, hotels, and many other businesses tied to tourism. Restaurants that once catered to a large number of Korean visitors will see a dramatic drop in revenue. And it's not just them. The car rental services, tour guides, and other entertainment activities will also be affected. Small businesses that relied heavily on Korean tourists may face closures or scale reductions, leading to job losses for many local residents. The impact of this shift in Korean tourists' preferences is not only short-term, but could persist into the future. As more Korean travelers start seeking other destinations, the U.S. will not only lose an important source of tourism, but also face a loss of trust and national image. Other international tourists, particularly from economically strong countries like Japan and South Korea, will take note of this change in travel behavior and may decide to avoid visiting the U.S. In addition to the direct financial impact, this shift also affects long-term competition within the tourism industry. Countries like Japan and France, with flexible tourism policies and warm welcomes for international visitors, are becoming increasingly attractive to tourists from countries like South Korea. Without a change in the U.S.'s approach and tourism policies, the country may lose its leading position in the global tourism industry. If you agree with the points raised in this story, leave a 1 in the comments below. If you disagree, leave a 0. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel to support us. Stay tuned for more updates and developments. The U.S. tourism industry, especially in major cities like Los Angeles, New York, Las Vegas, and Hawaii, has been facing a series of challenges due to the decline in international visitors, particularly from South Korea. South Korean tourists have long been a significant contributor to the local economy through spending in the service industries, from restaurants and hotels to taxi services like Uber. However, when the number of Korean tourists decreases or they choose not to visit the U.S., the economic impact is very evident and affects a wide range of industries and businesses that depend on international tourism. One of the most heavily impacted sectors when Korean tourists stop coming to the U.S. is the service industry. Uber drivers, hotel staff, and restaurant workers are all facing significant drops in income. Uber drivers, who once had steady earnings from serving tourists, are now struggling with fewer passengers. Meanwhile, hotel staff who relied on international guests are now dealing with vacant rooms and declining revenue. Korean-owned restaurants, which were popular destinations for Korean tourists, no longer face long waits for tables. These restaurants are now quiet, with employees being sent home early due to the lack of customers. Restaurants and stores that were once bustling, especially in Korean districts, have now been forced to close or scale back operations to cope with the drop in customers. This not only results in revenue loss, but also has a ripple effect on the economy of areas with large Korean communities, such as the Korean neighborhoods in Los Angeles, Hawaii, New York, and Las Vegas. Many families and individuals within the Korean community are also facing income loss, while small business owners are forced to cut costs or even shut down their operations. Korean neighborhoods in major cities, once crowded with tourists and residents, have now become quiet and deserted. In Los Angeles, Hawaii, Las Vegas, and New York, restaurants and stores serving Korean cuisine are no longer as busy as before. These neighborhoods, once lively and bustling with the presence of tour groups and locals, have now become eerily silent, with empty streets, closed shops, and restaurants with no patrons. This reflects a major shift in the tourism industry and its widespread impact on local businesses. Along with the quiet streets, employees at restaurants, hotels, and other tourism-related businesses are facing reduced working hours, layoffs, or even job losses. Car rental companies, tour services, and other entertainment activities that once relied on the presence of Korean tourists are also seeing reduced revenues and temporary closures. The impact of the decline in Korean tourists is not only immediate, but could have long-term consequences for the economy of areas reliant on international tourism. Korean neighborhoods, which once enjoyed a steady influx of tourists, now face unprecedented silence. Businesses need to quickly adapt and find alternative solutions to minimize the damage. To recover and sustain the growth of the U.S. tourism industry, particularly in the heavily affected areas, specific measures must be taken to attract international tourists back. The government and relevant authorities could consider revising visa policies, simplifying administrative procedures, and creating a more tourist-friendly environment to welcome international visitors. Local businesses should also consider diversifying their products and services so they are no longer overly dependent on a single group of tourists. The U.S. tourism industry is facing significant changes in the behavior of international travelers, particularly from South Korea. Factors such as stringent visa processes and the feeling of not being welcomed are causing many South Korean tourists to seek out alternative destinations. These changes not only affect tourism revenue, but could also have a long-term impact on America's image as a friendly and attractive destination for international visitors. One of the primary factors driving the shift in travel trends among South Koreans is the increasingly difficult and costly visa application process. The rise in visa fees and the stricter requirements for visa applications have made it difficult and exhausting for many South Korean travelers to navigate a complex process. Increased scrutiny, such as the demand for additional documentation, proving financial stability, travel history, and detailed background checks, has created additional barriers for visitors. In contrast to the stringent U.S. visa process, many other countries such as Japan, France, and various Southeast Asian destinations have much simpler visa procedures, making it easier for international travelers, particularly South Koreans, to visit. These factors not only push South Korean tourists away from the U.S., but also make other countries more appealing. When visa applications become time-consuming and costly, many people opt for countries with simpler procedures that save both time and effort. In addition to the complex visa process, another important factor contributing to South Koreans choosing alternative destinations is the feeling of being unwelcome when visiting the U.S. Recent events, such as the deportation of Korean workers in Georgia, have caused the Korean community and tourists to feel unfairly treated and unwelcome. When citizens of a country face unclear policies or controversial decisions, they can easily feel unsafe and disrespected when visiting. The disappointment and concern about being subjected to strict checks have heightened anxieties for tourists planning to visit the U.S. Not only are they worried about complicated administrative procedures, but they also feel that they will not receive a warm welcome, creating discomfort when visiting a country like the U.S. These issues not only affect the number of South Korean tourists, but also create a ripple effect that impacts other countries, where more welcoming visa policies and ease of entry are more attractive. While the U.S. faces significant barriers to attracting South Korean tourists, other countries are working to create more flexible and easier policies. Japan, for example, offers a simple visa application process that doesn't require excessive documentation. This makes Japan a more appealing destination for South Korean tourists rather than the U.S. Additionally, countries like France and Thailand stand out with convenient visa policies, combined with promotional travel programs and services welcoming international visitors. As other destinations strive to improve procedures and increase their warmth towards tourists, the U.S. is experiencing a decline in international visitors from countries like South Korea. This creates fierce competition from other destinations where simple procedures, friendliness, and cultural appeal easily attract tourists. To restore trust and re-attract South Korean tourists, the U.S. needs to reconsider its visa policies and create a simpler process, minimizing the complex procedures. This will improve the international travel experience and create a friendlier tourism environment. Moreover, the U.S. must do more to show warmth and friendliness toward international tourists, particularly those from countries like South Korea. A clear and flexible tourism strategy, combined with attractive travel promotion programs and reasonable visa policies, will help the U.S. not only revive tourism from South Korea, but also strengthen its position on the global tourism map. The tourism industry plays a vital role in the U.S. economy, not only generating revenue from tourists' spending, but also creating millions of jobs and contributing to the growth of service industries. However, when a significant number of international tourists, especially from countries like South Korea, cancel their trips, the consequences are not just financial, but also have wide-reaching impacts on industries and growth opportunities within the U.S. economy. An impressive figure highlighting the economic impact of tourism on the U.S. is that when 10,000 South Korean families cancel their trips, the U.S. economy can lose millions of dollars in revenue. On average, each South Korean tourist spends around $17,000 during their visit to the U.S., including expenses for hotels, restaurants, shopping, flights, and tourist activities. When these expenditures are lost, businesses within the tourism industry, ranging from restaurants to retail stores, from hotels to transportation services, are forced to deal with a sharp decline in revenue, directly affecting their profits and survival. The consequences of declining tourism extend beyond businesses directly related to tourism, as it impacts industries that depend on it. Services such as transportation, car rentals, travel insurance, and entertainment activities are also severely affected. This causes a slowdown in the local economy and triggers a negative chain reaction in other sectors. The loss of South Korean tourists could lead to an even greater setback: the long-term development opportunities for the U.S. tourism economy. International tourists are not only a source of immediate revenue, but also act as ambassadors of American culture, fostering diplomatic relationships and creating a positive image of the U.S. on the international stage. However, when tourists from countries like South Korea feel unwelcome or unfairly treated, they may choose to visit other destinations that offer a more accessible tourism environment. If dissatisfaction with visa processes and unfair treatment spreads, other countries like Mexico, India, or Brazil may also feel unwelcome and redirect their tourism elsewhere. Countries such as Dubai, Singapore, and Canada, with simpler visa policies and more welcoming tourism environments, are becoming increasingly attractive to international tourists. This could result in the U.S. losing a significant amount of tourism revenue from developed countries, not only reducing direct income but also eliminating long-term development opportunities. Another factor to consider is the shift in the mindset of international tourists towards the U.S. When tourists feel unwelcome or are concerned about unfair treatment, they will not only cancel their trips but could influence the decisions of other tourists from different countries. A decline in tourism from one major country can create a ripple effect, causing tourists from other regions to reconsider their destination choices. This could make it difficult for the U.S. tourism economy to recover and grow. As mentioned, industries reliant on tourism will suffer significant consequences if tourist numbers decline. Restaurants, hotels, retail stores, and entertainment services all play a key role in providing jobs and income to the economy. When the number of tourists drops, businesses face revenue loss, leading to scaling back operations or reducing staff. This not only impacts businesses, but also affects thousands of workers in the service industry. Additionally, the decline in South Korean tourists may lead to an imbalance in regions that depend on the tourism industry. Major cities like Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and New York, which have a strong presence of the Korean community and popular tourist spots, will face significant reductions in tourist numbers, directly impacting businesses and employment in those areas. The U.S. tourism industry is facing significant challenges with the decline in international visitors, particularly from countries like South Korea. To improve the situation and attract international tourists back, the U.S. needs to implement a series of reform measures. Here are specific proposals to help revive the industry. One of the most important factors influencing international tourists' decisions is the visa process. Currently, obtaining a U.S. visa is considered complicated and expensive, causing many tourists, especially from countries like South Korea, to rethink their travel plans to the U.S. To address this issue, the U.S. must simplify the visa application process and reduce the complex administrative procedures. In particular, reducing visa fees and expanding electronic visa options for visitors from economically developed countries will make travel to the U.S. more accessible and ease international tourists' concerns. Additionally, Expanding visa exemptions or reducing processing times for visitors from countries with high tourism rates will help restore confidence and attract tourists back to the U.S. The U.S. must also implement a strong communication strategy to promote its image as a safe, friendly, and welcoming destination for international visitors. This involves not only easing administrative procedures, but also building a positive image of the country's diversity and inclusiveness. Promoting policies that protect international tourists' rights and ensuring their safety will help create a sense of security for travelers visiting the U.S. Instead of allowing negative events, such as the deportation of Korean workers, to damage the country's image, the U.S. should highlight positive stories of warm welcomes and support for visitors. Communication strategies can include organizing global promotional campaigns, partnering with international tourism organizations, and using social media channels to connect with travelers, making them feel that the U.S. is a safe and opportunity-filled destination. Another crucial factor in attracting international tourists back to the U.S. is the collaboration between government agencies and local businesses. Tourism businesses, restaurants, hotels, and other support services play a key role in creating a great travel experience for visitors. The government needs to work with these businesses to launch quick support programs and special incentives for international tourists. Programs such as discounted flight tickets, hotel room deals, or free admission to attractions for international tourists will create a positive domino effect. These initiatives will not only help businesses in the tourism sector recover quickly, but also make tourists feel welcomed and motivated to return to the U.S. Moreover, creating special travel packages, in combination with cultural, sports, and arts programs, will help the U.S. attract international tourists more effectively. Large events like international tourism fairs, cultural festivals, or holiday travel promotions will help position the U.S. as an unmissable destination. The U.S. must also continue improving services for tourists and security at tourist sites. A safe, secure, and easily accessible travel environment will make visitors feel more at ease when visiting. Airports, tourist sites, and major cities need to focus on enhancing security services to ensure the safety of travelers without increasing feelings of anxiety or fear. By adopting these strategies and initiatives, the U.S. can improve its tourism sector and attract more international visitors, contributing to a strong recovery and long-term growth in the industry. The United States, with its position as one of the world's leading travel destinations, faces a critical question. Does America want to maintain its reputation as the top destination, or will it allow other countries to seize this opportunity? In the current climate, with increasing barriers such as strict visa processes and the perception of unfriendliness, international tourists, particularly from major countries like South Korea, are beginning to turn away from the U.S. These factors not only affect tourism businesses, but also deeply impact the country's economy. If no timely improvements are made, America risks losing its top position in the global tourism industry. To sustain and develop its tourism sector, the U.S. needs to make significant changes in visa policies, simplify entry procedures, and create a more welcoming environment for international visitors. This will not only help the U.S. attract tourists from countries like South Korea, but also open the door for other countries to return to the U.S. Local businesses must closely collaborate with the government, launching support programs for tourists and continuously improving service quality. If the U.S. can improve and refresh its tourism policies, the economy will recover and the country will continue to be an ideal destination for international travelers in the years to come. In the fiercely competitive global tourism market, maintaining and developing the tourism industry is not just an economic issue, but a strategic choice for America's long-term growth. Action taken now will determine whether the U.S. can hold its position or let other countries surpass it and claim this opportunity. Thank you for watching the video. If you found this information helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on the future of U.S. tourism. We look forward to your support and companionship in our future videos. See you next time.